Dear devotees, good morning. Welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. Antaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskrityam Narottamam Narachaivam Devim Saraswati Vyasa Tato Jayamudirayat Ashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Krishna devotees, so we are reading today a few verses from the 5th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 24, verses 9 to 14, the subterranean heavenly planets. Okay, I'll read Sanskrit. Yeshu Maharaja Mayana Maya Vina Vinirmita Purunana Mani Pravara Praveka Virachita Vichitra Bhavana Prakara Gopura Shabha Chaitya Chatvara Yatana Dibhir Nagasura Mithuna Paravata Shuka Shari Karirnam Kridrim Abhumibhir Vivareshvara Grihottamai Samalankritas Chakasati. Word-to-word translation. Yeshu in these lower planetary systems. Maharaja, Almighty King. Mayana by the demon named Maya. Mayavina possessing advanced knowledge in the construction of material comforts. Vinirmita constructed. Pura cities. Nanamani pravara of valuable gems. Praveka with excellent, Virachita constructed, Vichitra wonderful, Bhavana houses, Prakara walls, Kopura gates, Shabha legislative meeting rooms, Chaitya temples, Chatvara schools, Ayatana Adibhi with hotels or recreation halls and so on. Naga of living entities with snake-like bodies. Asura of demons or godless persons. Mithuna by couples. Paravata pigeons. Shuka parrots. Sharika minus. Akirna crowded. Ritrima artificial. Bhumibhi possessing areas. Vivara Ishvara of the leaders of the planets. Griha Uttamai with first-class houses. Samalankritaha, decorated, chakasate, shine magnificently. Translation. My dear king, in the imitation heavens known as Bila Svarga, there is great demon named Maya Danava, who is an expert artist and architect. He has constructed many brilliantly decorated cities. There are many wonderful houses, walls, gates, assembly houses, temples, yards, and temple compounds, as well as many hotels serving as residential quarters for foreigners. The houses for the leaders of these planets are constructed with the most valuable jewels, and they're always crowded with living entities known as Nagas and Asuras, as well as many pigeons, parrots, and similar birds. All in all, these imitation heavenly cities are most beautifully situated and attractively decorated. Continue reading the verses 10, 11, 12, and 13. Attract anyone and make his mind fully blossom in the pleasure of sense gratification. There are many lakes and reservoirs with clear, transparent water, agitated by jumping fish and decorated with many flowers such as lilies, kuvalayas, kahlaras, and blue and red lotuses. Pairs of chakravakas and many other water birds nest in the lakes and always enjoy in a happy mood, making sweet, pleasing vibrations that are very satisfying and conducive to enjoyment of the senses. Since there is no sunshine, in those subterranean planets, time is not divided into days and nights. Consequently, fear produced by time does not exist. Many great serpents reside there with gems on their hoods, and the effulgence of these gems dissipates the darkness in all directions. Since the residents of these planets drink and bathe in juices and elixirs made from wonderful herbs, they are freed from all anxieties and physical diseases. They have no experience of gray hair, wrinkles, or invalidity. Their bodily lusters do not fade. Their perspiration does not cause a bad smell, and they are not troubled by fatigue or by lack of energy or enthusiasm due to old age. Last verse, they live very auspiciously and do not fear death from anything but death's established time, which is the effulgence of the Sudarshana chakra of the Supreme Personality of God. Purport. This is the defect of material existence. Everything in the subterranean heavens is very nicely arranged. There are well-situated residential quarters, there is a pleasing atmosphere, and there are no bodily inconveniences or mental anxieties, but nevertheless, those who live there have to take another birth according to karma. Persons whose minds are dull cannot understand this defect of a materialistic civilization aiming at material comforts. One may make his living conditions very pleasing for the senses, but despite all favorable conditions, one must, in due course of time, meet death. The members of a demoniac civilization endeavor to make their living conditions very comfortable, but they cannot check death. The influence of the Sudarshana chakra will not allow their so-called material happiness to endure. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyanandana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayarupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubheva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Devashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So we continue in these chapters which describe various Vedic cosmology and planets and how is life there. It's like an encyclopedia of the universe. So, but I would like to remind you a verse from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, from the 10th chapter, verse number 6, which is summarizing all that we are reading here very nicely in one verse, you can say. And the verse sounds like this. Maharshaya sapta purve chatvaro manavastatha madbhava manasa jata yesham loka ima praja. The seven great sages, of which we just read in the previous chapter, the seven sages and their planets, and before them the four other great sages and the Manus, progenitors of mankind, come from me, born from my mind, and all the living beings populating the various planets descend from them. And short purport. The Lord has given a genealogical synopsis of the universal population. Brahma is the original creature born out of the energy of the Supreme Lord, who is known as Hiranyagarbha. And from Brahma, all the seven great sages, and before them, four other great sages named Sanaka, Sananda, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumara, and the 14 Manus are manifested. All these 25 great sages are known as the patriarchs of the living entities all over the universe. There are innumerable universes and innumerable planets within each universe, and each planet is full of population of different varieties. All of them are born of these 25 patriarchs. Brahma underwent penance for 1,000 years of the demigods before he realized by the grace of Krishna how to create. Then from Brahma came Sanaka, Sananda, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumara, then Rudra, and then the seven sages. And in this way, all the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas are born out of the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Brahma is known as Pitamaha, the grandfather, and Krishna is known as Pratitamaha, the father of the grandfather. That is stated in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 1139. So, now we know that the source is Supreme Personality of Godhead, and from him everything emanates. And those residents that we're reading about on the lower planetary systems, Nagas and Asuras, all of them are actually still coming from from the Lord, and from Lord Brahma, then from his great sages and Manus. And so, in that sense, we're all relatives. The only difference is that the creatures that live there, the beings, not necessarily human beings, Nagas are not exactly human beings. So all of them are relatives, but the desire is to live very comfortably without serving the Lord directly. Although we can read even in this purport here, in the text 9, that they have temples. So they must be worshiping somewhere, someone there, if they have the temples and the temple compounds. So whoever they worship, like in ancient Greece, they were imagining different, they had their gods that they were worshiping, and then sometimes they were inventing new gods. And one time they even created a temple to the unknown god, and the temple had the name unknown god, so you could come and worship. So whoever they worship there in those temples, some worship is going on. You see the way that society the advanced society is structured, or the civilized society is structured, is they have all of those facilities, including religious aspect or temple worship aspect. Otherwise, it's not a civilized society. And you can see in the other verses here that the gardens and all of those beauties that they have, they even surpass the beauty of the upper heavenly planets. How how interesting is that? So you can say, okay, so why should I go to heavenly planets if I can go to a better place where there's even more beauty and enjoyment, no bodily pains, no mental anxieties. Looks like a perfect place, but there's no sunshine, for example. And right now the sun is shining right on this direction towards me, so it's so beautiful to see the sunshine. And yesterday when there was an eclipse, in fact, it was almost full eclipse, and I was just walking, most of the time I spent inside, but I was just walking exactly at the moment the eclipse was happening. And it was backwards. I didn't look at it because it's very unauspicious and very bad actually to look at the eclipses. In fact, even to be outside during the eclipse. So I was chanting as I was walking, but the sunshine was from behind, but the whole atmosphere, that sunlight, because Rahu was attacking and most of it was covered, most of the sun was covered. That sunshine that was there, even though the light was there, it was so strange light, it was like, it was bright and dark at the same time. Very uncomfortable feeling. And when the full eclipse happens, as mentioned, I think before in the last class, that even the dogs and animals and birds, they stop, chirping, they stop barking. It just becomes super quiet and a very unpleasant atmosphere is there. So when you see that, when the sun is fully covered, for that little moment when it becomes dark, even though it's a day, it's not like fully dark, it's not like dead of the night, but it's like completely very, very dark. So imagine this, if you ever experienced the full eclipse, then that is something, kind of imagine to live permanently in that kind of shade and darkness, you know. Of course, as has been described, the Nagas, they shine their jewels, and their jewels produce light, and with this light, it's illuminated the whole of those lower planetary systems. But nonetheless, in other words, there's no sunlight at all. It's a very a strange situation to even imagine. So. Hare Krishna. Okay, we're back online. Sorry, it's internet, temple, usual situation. So, please tolerate. And so, when there's no sunlight, how do you track the time, right? So, the only way we track the day, 24 hours, is by having the moon rising, sun rising, sun setting, moon setting, like this. So that's how we know there's a night and day, and so that's why, there's a time, there's an influence of time. In those planets, you don't feel the influence of time. It reminds me of this four great principles that we're following. One of them is not to gamble. I gave this example also before, that if you go to casino, don't go to casino, but if you happen to go there to use a toilet facility or something, you'll find out that the whole area, whatever that building is, there's no windows. And if there are, windows. They're fully covered with a complete black blinds and then extra curtains, and there's no clock anywhere, so you cannot track the time. They want you to lose the sense of time in order to get this gambling sensation experience, which is, by the way, also Krishna. So that's feeling of gambling. It's also coming from Krishna. So, but and then they make you lose all the money because you'll be completely forgetting about the time and spend all the money. And this is what's happening in those lower planetary systems. There's no sense of time, and there's no sense of old age. There's no disease, mental anxiety. So everything is just good, constant enjoyment. How good is that? So, but actually, it's a curse because they don't know one thing, that the law of this material universe works like that the death will certainly come, and as it says here, it will come at the established time. And what is that established time? Who knows what's the established time? You know, where's it? It's the verse. Do not fear death from anything but death's established time, which is the effulgence of Sudarshan chakra. So that's even worse. The death will come without any notice, all of a sudden, and bring to an end a constant comfort, enjoyment that was just going on. You imagine you're not experiencing any weakness, any lack of energy. It's a constant enthusiasm, and all of a sudden, end of the show, bang! Wow, that must be such a distress to all of those residents of those planets. On the contrary, here in the middle planetary systems, where we have a little more unhappiness than happiness, as you have already probably all noticed as your life goes on. I mean, devotees are constantly in bliss. That's a different thing. But in terms of body, we do experience all of those anxieties, stresses, But this is actually the benediction. There was a story when one resident, his name was Amrita, he was trying to become friends with Yamaraj, with the king of death, and the ultimate justice for this, to represent the law of God. And so he tried to befriend with him so he can understand when the death is coming, so that he doesn't have to fear the death in the meantime. So he said, "Can you just write me a letter when my time is up, so that I can wrap up all my activities here in this material world?" So that friendship, and Maharaj said, "Okay, I will warn you." So the man was getting older, and so all of a sudden, the first letter came. That first letter was gray hair. It's actually mentioned in this verse. They have no experience of gray hair, but gray hair is the first notice of upcoming death. So, but that person was so indulged and he was expecting a physical letter, not that kind of letter. So he didn't understand. This is the first letter. So he was continued to enjoy it, and just didn't have any fear of death, which is so good, right? It's just fearless. And then the second letter came, and the second letter was his eyesight. Get the right order. I think the second one was his eyesight became a bit dim. Oh no, sorry. Second was teeth. His teeth started to fell off, and becoming loose, just getting off. So that was the second letter of death, approaching death, and he still ignored it. He was still enthusiastic, continuing with his activities. Then third one, his eyesight became very dim. He couldn't see properly anymore. His eyesight became very bad. And he still ignored it until the fourth letter came, that when he got paralyzed. It was a stroke of some kind. So that was the final letter. And he still thought, I'm have time, I can enjoy. And then Yamaraj is coming, and he's like, "Oh, my friend, why are you coming in this horrible form?" To pull him through the neck like they do, to bring to the justice court and punish because he didn't live a pious life. And he said, well, what's going on? He didn't warn me. He said, you expected me to get actually a pen and paper and write you a letter? No, I sent you the letters, but because you were so indulged in sense gratification, you ignored all the 4 letters. He named those letters. And the man realized that he misunderstood. He was not attentive enough. He didn't feel the sense of time as he was absorbed in the indulgence of this world. So when we follow in the 4 regulative principles, I did mention this before, but it's very important to mention it again. When we follow our 4 regulative principles of freedom, one of the side effects of those 4 regulative principles is understanding the sense, having the sense of time. We understand. We are not bewildered. We get in a sober tracking of time. Because if one is drinking alcohol or any other type of drugs, taking any type of drugs, he getting lost in the perception of time. He doesn't understand whether it's day or night, whether it's a sea or a land, for him everything's. So another state is when somebody is eating a lot of meat and other products like this. It's intoxicants. It usually comes also with alcohol anyway to digest it all. So all of those sense enjoyments of the opposite sex, we're losing the sense of time, tracking of time, how the time goes, and with that we forget that we're getting old. We can neglect our gray hair. We can just paint it in the dark and ignore it. With teeth, we can put implants or some other artificial teeth, and then think that we have the teeth. With eyesight, we can put glasses on, or we can make a surgical operation and resume the sharpness of our eyesight. And with paralysis, when the stroke comes, we can get some medicine and start to do more exercises, and also ignore that. So we can ignore all the letters that are coming with imminent death. But we have the procedure. We have to, one of the first questions that Maharaj Parikshit is asking, what shall I do? Now, I'm about to die. What is the duty of a person who is about to die? What he must do? And one of those wonderful answers is the most important thing that you're supposed to do is to read and hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Ideally, hear it from the pure devotees of the Lord. Hear about pastimes of the Lord. That will bring you to immortality. No more birth, old age, disease. And even in the places like there's no disease, like we read just now, there's still death. And it's even more painful, that death that comes all of a sudden, than death that you expect. By the letters you receive from Yamaraj, you're preparing yourself, you're changing your lifestyle, you're getting more absorbed in pilgrimage. That's how you go from the ashramas, from brahmachari to grihastha, from grihastha to vanaprastha. For vanaprastha, at least in mentally, you don't have to maybe get the danda as such, but you have to completely surrender and dedicate your life to the Lord. That's the ultimate stage. In other words, you die before death coming, like His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj wrote the book, right? Mentioning, this chapter about the die before the death comes. So this is very important, to get rid of all the pains and pleasures. In other words, both are the attachments. So the person who will depart this world very easily is a person who doesn't have attachments. And guess what's holding you in this world? What are those attachments? One of those attachments is not just like opposite sex or this. No, it's your pains, your traumas that you went through, and because you are still angry with somebody, or you're not forgiving somebody, or some other pain, that pain is actually holding you also in this material world. It's not just I'm attached to this object, it's so beautiful. Not that. It's those strong feeling within this material world. So like, I don't know, I'm upset that my country got invaded. I must revenge. And so you get born in order to revenge and like this. So all of those, whatever those strong feelings that can grab us and bind us in this material world. That's why Krishna says to Arjuna, you fight, but not get attached to the results of the fight. That is my business. I'm deliver the result. You just do your duty and remember me. So that's the most important. Remember the Lord from every time, everywhere, whatever you do. So there are days for remembrance of the Lord specifically, like Ekadashis and Vaishnava celebrations. We're going to have one coming next week, Ramanavami, so we can absorb our consciousness in remembrance of the Lord. And in this, we will get ourselves closer to immortality. Devotees are the only category in this material world when the sunrise and sunset, they shorten the life of every living being in this material world. But devotees, when they're going through every sunrise and sunset, it gets them closer to immortality. So I would like to stop here. 15 minutes for discussion, questions, comments. Hare Krishna. Raise a hand, you can write in the chat, or you can run from Pujari room and say something and run back. Nobody. Today, everybody's very humble.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
If nobody else has a comment or question, I'll express some of my thoughts. And I want to thank you for a very nice class, reminding us of what is important. These narrations that we're hearing from this particular chapter are very extraordinary. It seems strange that living entities who are who have dedicated themselves actually to forgetfulness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are enjoying an extraordinarily high standard of material life. As you say, they still have their problems. It's not perfect, and death is still traumatic, but it's an extraordinary standard of living that is higher than the demigods who are actually devotees. And I'm reminded now that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur speaks about this in his commentaries to this chapter, that and he makes reference to the story of Bali Maharaj, that in the struggle between the Asuras and the Asuras, the Suras and the Asuras, the devotees and the demons, the demigods are begging the help of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And upon recovering the heavenly planets, they're thinking that this is the blessing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Indra, in fact, did not get the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That being awarded the recovery of the heavenly planets actually is not an act of the Lord's mercy, because these sorts of things only serve um, to induce forgetfulness of Krishna. So it's kind of the booby prize. Whereas Bali actually received the mercy of the Lord, even though he was uh, deprived of the three worlds. Everything was taken from him. He was left only with his body, and he was bound up by uh, the ropes of what is that?
Vasuki.
Yes,
Oh,
right.
Vasuki.
And um, and placed in a cave. But Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that uh, he actually received the true mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead because he was blessed with Krishna Bhakti. And so for him, nothing was unobtainable, but he had the greatest thing of all. And in fact, the Supreme Personality of Godhead agreed to become uh, the doorkeeper of Bali Maharaj, a subordinate. Krishna is captured by Bhakti and agrees even to become subordinate to his devotee. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that that is the real mercy. So in this chapter, both the demigods, higher planetary systems, and the residents of the subterranean heavenly planets, all of them have not gotten the real mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are all blessed with conditions that serve to induce forgetfulness of Krishna. I am curious about it's described in this chapter that the residents of the subterranean heavenly planets, which is, all of them, they have different forms. Some of them appear as nagas. They have snake-like bodies. So all different species, different types of bodies, and all of them experience these same extraordinary conditions of life: freedom from anxiety and the ravages of old age. Uh, so then one might wonder, how do they eat? What do they eat? Because one living entity is food for another. So what is their food source then, if all the different species are not subject to predation, then uh, how do they eat? But it is mentioned that they consume various elixirs and juices made from divine herbs. So I guess the herbs don't necessarily enjoy a full life without being threatened by death. The herbs are harvested. Um, I don't know what else they live on, but that question comes to my mind. It's not an important question, but that's the way my mind works. I get these silly questions in my head, just trying to reconcile everything that doesn't seem to make complete sense to me. Anyway, it's to me at least, these narrations are extraordinary, that merely that it's possible to have such an extraordinary standard of living independent of Krishna, but it's actually a curse, not really a blessing at all, but actually a curse. Material happiness is not actual happiness, and yet um, all the descriptions seem to indicate that they are free from anxiety, which is usually the hallmark of someone who is in forgetfulness of Krishna. The materialists are always full of anxieties. They have all kinds of anxieties, all kinds of problems. Even the demigods are not completely free of anxieties. They have problems. Um, they they feel the passing of time. They know that their time is limited, that at some point or other they are going to lose their position in the heavenly planets. At some time, their life comes to an end. They may not experience old age, but they are threatened by the possibility of death. They do engage in warfare, and sometimes they are killed. Actually, that happens to the demons also. Um, they also have those issues. But the devotees, the actual devotees, the Vaishnavas, remarkably are not distracted even by the prospect of a life that seems to be quite ideal, limitless enjoyment without even any element of fatigue. Um, Without ever losing the ability to enjoy something and without anxiety, just a full life of extraordinary sense gratification under the most apparently ideal conditions. But the Vaishnavas are not interested. They don't care. Um, to them, even the most heavenly situation is hellish if it's devoid of Krishna. They want a relationship with Krishna only. Nothing
Yes.
else appeals to them. That's extraordinary. That's an extraordinary thing. Why would that be? It's almost senseless. But for the devotee, Krishna is everything. Krishna is everything. There's nothing more to be desired. They don't care. Um, Even they may be subject to apparently externally at least, they may be subject to hellish conditions, but they will accept that over heavenly conditions if it means that they can remember Krishna and have somehow an opportunity to serve Krishna. Uh,
There's an there's an interesting testimony to what you're just saying, Tarak Prabhu. I heard the story half a year ago. I think I mentioned it maybe, but it's worth repeating. First of all, I want to correct myself. Not Vasuk, it's Varuna robes that Bali Maharaj was buying with. And
okay,
apparently, they cause great pain. It's not just normal ropes that you tied and you cannot move, but actually also they give pain to the body. Anyway, the testimony that I wanted to say about the devotees choosing Krishna over different various enjoyments, and I think this is what we're supposed to focus on this chapter, because you hear, if you just read this, it will seem like it's like a advertisement to go to the, lower heavenly planets. But
right,
Srila Prabhupada in his purports, right there in the purport today, his first sentence he starts with, "This is the defect of material existence." He immediately cuts down all those kind of ideas of advertisements for vacations in different places of the universe uh, very strongly. And there was a devotee who got into the car accident. The car drove almost 100 miles an hour, just hit him on the side of the road. His legs, he was he was supposed to die actually. His legs got severely damaged, and when he was brought to the hospital, the doctors looked at it and said, "Wow, like we don't know, like we just don't know if we're gonna be able to." Anyway, usually they cut the legs in this case, but they decided to do a surgical operation because he was young. And they said, we'll give him 2 days. If there will be a symptom of it starts in like recovering, then we'll keep it. If not, we'll just cut it. He was in coma for 3 days. And while he was in coma, this devotee reports that he is now very healthy and eagerly serving Audari Dhamma Prabhu, who came here last summer. So he still serves him as his personal servant. So he said that when he left the body, you know, because he lived kind of pious life for over 10 years, he was preaching vigorously and like that. He was given options. He could go to 4 different heavenly planets. There was like a windows with a tunnel going. If you go this way, you will be famous, healthy, and whatever this, you will have such a loving parents. It's unbelievable. This is the comfort there. This is that. And then he just had this thought. Oh, wait a minute, where's Krishna in all of those scenarios? You know, he looked at those 4. And where's Krishna? Just the moment he said that, Srila Prabhupada appeared. And so he said, wow, I remembered Krishna, and here's Prabhupada coming. That's it, I'm going back to Godhead then. But Srila Prabhupada told him, no, you're not going back to Godhead. He said, why not, Prabhupada? I just remembered Krishna. He said, well, because in order to go back to Krishna, you have to love Krishna. You have to selflessly serve him. But the way you served so far, you just did it for your own sense gratification. You didn't do this thing because you're attached to Krishna or because you love Krishna. Now I'm paraphrasing right now his speech, but maybe a little extending even his conversation with Prabhupada. But the essence was that. What Srila Prabhupada told him is because you did not do it with a motive of loving Krishna or serving him, pleasing him. That's the word. You didn't do it to please Krishna, whatever preaching you did. You just did it, for your own fame, prestige, or just because it's the right thing to do. You have not developed attachment to Krishna, so you're not going back to Krishna yet. But he said, but since there were only 4 options available, now since you remembered Krishna, there's a 5th option. You can go back and do it the right way. And so Prabhupada offered him a 5th option, and he agreed to that. And so all of a sudden he's waking up in a complete bliss and ecstasy. All his body was in a complete disaster. And to surprise of everyone, including his parents and like that, he cured so quickly from all of that he had that he's now running like it's a normal healthy person. Like there's no, I mean, there's definitely on his legs there are scars and marks and like that, but it doesn't affect him at all his physical ability right now. So anyway, just a story that devotees report. We sometimes may think, oh, imagined it or whatever, but because there's so many stories like that from devotees, and they correspond with Shastra, so uh, it's supposed to be inspiring for us to hear. And to take our practice more seriously, to take our time that we have here more seriously, to use it properly, both, and not both, everything, mind, speech, body, in the service of the Lord. Only then, and of course with the right motive also, to please Krishna. Try to do that. Try to develop this mood, service attitude that I want to do it to please Krishna or to please devotees of Krishna, in which way you please Krishna more. Like this. So, just wanted to add that. Any final comments before deities open up?
Hi Krishna, good morning, Dinu
Hi, Krishna.
Midoriya. Good morning, devotees. Wow. The past 2 days have just been amazing to me in classes. And I was thinking about in Bhagavad Gita when Krishna said this knowledge was lost, like there was a point where it just stopped being passed down or got perverted. And how in certain faiths it's lost or it's hidden. But if somebody's really seeking, they'll find their way and then hopefully find their way to a devotee. And I was thinking that when Moses was up on the mountain and he said, who should I tell them you are? The answer was, I am. And that when we talked about this yesterday, that Dasha Prem said the Om, is a way of meditating on God. And Om Soham, I am that I am. So they were given it. They just didn't know what it was. And then these planets that you're talking about, that's what some people are actually aspiring to. And they think that that's heaven. They think there'll be streets of gold and there'll be no pain and there'll be no, and like, this is the aspect. And to be able to be understanding when you're talking to someone that it's not, it's a lack, it's a misunderstanding, and to be kind and gentle when we bring this and we preach to people, because it's information that's been, I guess, uploaded into them, bad information over many, many generations. And so we have to be kind, because this is a gift to get this much knowledge and to really understand that. Who wouldn't be aspiring toward that? It sounds like exactly like heaven. It sounds like a wonderful thing. But to have the understanding and intelligence to realize, like, no, that you want to seek going back to Godhead. And Krishna is so sweet that even where it's lost and perverted, he's still throwing breadcrumbs. He's still giving people a little bit, enough that they can follow, and maybe the blessing in this lifetime is that they will encounter a devotee and their eyes will be open. But if not, we know he's even so merciful, like he said to Arjuna, you'll get another chance. And so, isn't Krishna always merciful? And isn't that what we should be seeking? For me, a lot of this stuff about planets and here and there, and whether it's Rahu or the moon that blotted the sun, it may be over my head, but you know what's not? Having a heart for Krishna. So thank you for your class. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Lakshmi. I have a little request from you. If you wouldn't mind, send me this wonderful picture that you have with Krishna at this calf on WhatsApp if you have it. Thank you. So inspiring, such nice picture. All right, did you just open it right away? Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, go Premanande, Haribol. I Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Sri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Shavaya Namaha Yadavaya Mandavaya Keshavaya Namaha Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan. Pure devotion service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering, and attain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to the lotus feet, confidence with the lotus path. Love of my love. Fills my consciousness. He is my Lord, turned up to birth. From him ecstatic and illuminated, and he is the very expression of his head. Out of the Jesus, the total verse. Friend of the poor, not master of glories, O master of movement. Give us the shame and the mercy. Your face that calls you. His divine grace is Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.